Hello and welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. It's Saturday and for some of us, me at least, it is my first match coverage of the 21-22 season. I didn't see the game the other night, so it'll also be the first time that I'm watching Ange Postecoglou and the start of the age of Ange. I'm joined today by Tony Haggerty, Brian Degnan and Lawrence Connolly. How you doing, fellas?
Very well, Laura.
Excellent. So, for anybody who is just tuning in, obviously later on today in about half an hour's time there will be a kick-off between Celtic and Charlton Athletic at the training ground down in Wales where they've been based for the last few weeks. Before I ask the guys their thoughts on it, I'll read out the team to you for anybody that's not seen it. In goals it's Barkas, then we've got Ralston, Welsh, Beaton, Taylor, McGregor, who's taking the captain's armband today, Soro, Karamoko, Dembele, Turnbull, Montgomery and Ajeti. Brian, I'll come to you first. We were trying to figure out exactly what the tactical layout was today, not because it was beguiling us with the numerical order of the names as some genius came up with, but just because it did look as if the shape might be slightly different. What are your thoughts on the team and how we're potentially going to line up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the team. My assumption would be it'll be a similar sort of setup. So in the first game he played, he set out as a sort of rigid 4-3-3. But it changed dramatically throughout the game. The two wingers were pulling inside, the striker was dropping deep, and the midfielders were overlapping the fullbacks and stuff. So I think it's pretty fluid. My assumption is it will be a front three of Big Albi, Young Dembele, and Wee Monty as a front three by the looks of it. But again, it could be the case it transfers, which actually is what I'm quite excited about. I liked the fluidity on the play last time. So hopefully more of that.
Yeah, that sounds to me like that's probably sensible. And Lawrence, I'll come to you on this one. It looks like it's more towards the kind of lineup we might expect to see for the start of the season or for the Midtjylland game next week. And encouraging to see players like Montgomery, Karamoko, Welsh, Ralston in there, keeping to Ange's philosophy of playing the young players. Do you think this is a representation of what we're going to see in the next few weeks?
Definitely, if we don't sign any players, it isn't. Let's be honest. So I don't know what's happening on the signing front. But listen, great to see Karamoko, but he's going into last year's contract, so we need to get him some games soon. Show some faith in him. If we want to persuade him, if he's got enough to be offered another contract from him, and if we're going to persuade him to sign. Who doesn't have reservations about Anthony Ralston at right back? You know what? But listen, it's there for him. He's getting his chance. It's just a worry. But I think Ange just came out and said that's one of his worry positions: right back, centre back, and wingers. So he's already identified where we were weak, which was kind of where Lenny identified we were weak last year as well. Wingers, centre halves, and right back. But so nothing's changed really on the weakness front. So hopefully, whoever, we don't have a head of recruitment, whoever's handling the recruitment gets their finger out and fills some of these weak spots for us.
Well, I have to say, Lawrence, you've prompted me to do there is slam my laptop shut and just sack it off for the day, because this is not looking very positive. But Tony, I'll come to you to try and lift our spirits a wee bit. What are you making of the lineup? Encouraging to see, as Lawrence and Brian have said, Karamoko in there. Hopefully not just the same as what's happened previously, where he makes his wee cameo in the pre-season and then we don't see hiding our hair of him for the rest of it.
Well, man, Jared was spot on, wasn't he? Never mind the defence, we'll just work on the offensive lineup, because that's the defence that's anywhere near the defence that takes to the field against Midtjylland. I'm afraid. I'm very afraid. The near corner of the heart of that defence strikes terror into my heart, to be fair. And I said yesterday about Anthony Ralston, I just don't know if he'll cut it as a Celtic player for me. But, you know, we need defenders. We spoke about it on the pod yesterday. And offensively, I'm quite happy with that. 3 in the middle and 3 up front, if that's what it's to be. I think everybody wants to see more of Karamoko Dembele. See what he's got. You know, and this is his chance to shine, and his opportunity to shine, and a chance for him to say, look, put me in that team against the Danes in 10 days' time. You know, so I'm all for that. You just worry about the defence, don't you? And as Lauren said, we've identified positions, but we're still no signed any players. And we're linked with 3 or 4 defenders, but somehow, in true Celtic fashion, we can't get them over the line. And you just kind of worry. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Type feeling towards that, isn't there? You know, so hopefully not. Hopefully we get some deals done, but will they be done in time for them to get anywhere near what they need in for the Midtjylland game? I conjecture not.
Right, well, I was looking for some positivity
and on
there.
that theory and positive note, Laura, take the show to where you want to.
Listen, Tony, see when you said beating strikes fear into your heart, you used to have a centre half, Bobo Baldy, would strike fear into the opposition.
That's what I mean.
And now we've got centre halves that strike fear into.
Scaring you.
Well, Lawrence, I was going to come to you on the centre half issue anyway. Christopher Julian is a player that, you know, many appear to have forgotten because he's so he seems to be struggling to get over this injury that he's got. I'm not aware, unless you are, of any timeline for when he returns, but surely he'll be a key figure for somebody like Welsh to partner at the back, and maybe things will look a bit more assured that way.
I think it's end of September, beginning of October before we're going to see him. And I don't know if that's just seeing him in training or ready for the first team. But I thought young Leo Higel done okay, so it's beating Rio the future. I mean, it's still only friendly. You've got, for me, is beating the future, or is a guy we should be really thinking? I'd play Higel all day today. You know, it's minutes on the park, it's minutes in his legs, it's experience. But I don't think near beating inspires anyone at centre half. He's a bit of a utility player for us, brilliant, but we're not really going to learn anything that we didn't already know. Maybe Ange will learn something, in fairness. Maybe Ange just wants to see him in the flesh. But for me, it'd be Higel and Welsh. But yeah, I mean, Julian, big money signing for us at the time. When he cracked against that post, it was, geez, you know, the game was over by then as well, and he's slid back and into the post. You know, the injury seems to be pretty serious, but yeah, he's got the experience that you know, he's a goal scoring centre half. Welsh could definitely, you know, pick up some tips from him. But today, you know, you're thinking, what? Just why beating? Just why? Just lay a yell there. And where's O'Connor? Really, is it? Well, but then again, maybe Ange has seen Ralston in O'Connor and said, Ralston's better. I don't know. Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, there's a fresh pair of eyes can do a lot of things. Brian, we were talking about it on the bulletin yesterday. He seems to certainly been given Barkas and Ajeti a second lease at life and a second chance at Celtic. Do you think? We heard their thoughts on it yesterday, but what are your thoughts there? Is there a future for either of them at the club? Do you think?
I think so. I mean, look, if we base our judgments on last season, then absolutely not. But the fact that he had Ajeti as captain, I thought Ajeti was actually really good the other day. I thought he put himself about, he worked a lot harder, he was looking in good shape, he was quite vocal, he was encouraging the younger guys. So maybe there's something there that we've not seen so far. So I think, look, and it's a point I keep making, and I think given the fact we're so light on bodies, we have to maximise what's there until, even, it could be the case last day of the transfer window, we get a star striker in and then someone can go. But until then, we've got to give the guys a chance. Maybe not every player at the club a chance, but I think there's guys like that probably deserve a chance because did they get a fair cracking up last year? I don't know, it's hard to say how much was there, how much was learning. Just to touch on something Lawrence said there about right back, so I'm just looking at the second half team, which they've also on Celtic produced, and I can't see anyone playing at right back. So I don't know if he's going to change the formation. It looks like the defensive players are Murray, who I thought done well the other day, Big Helge, and Montgomery. I can't see any recognised right backs, because the rest of the team is Johnson, Shaw, Henderson, and Christie. So unless they're going to switch up and do like a 3-4-3 or something, it may be the case he's not bothered about a right back because he may not play that system, who knows, but listen, I'm really excited, and I thought in terms of the centre halves, I actually thought Big Murray, although he's only 18, done really well. So the big Kelge, I think they gave, along with Shaw, a real strong physical presence. I think they're like 6'3" minimum. The big lads, and it's something we missed last year, I think.
But does that not highlight, Brian, that we need defenders?
Yeah, of course.
We need defenders yesterday.
Aye, but I think what we might see is, again, I've said before, I don't think we've got this idea we need 11 new players, and we probably do, but we're going to likely to get that, considering we've got Big Uragidi so far. It's probably looking like no. So I think it's going to try and basically patch up the starting 11 with maybe 4 or 5 signings and try and filter through as many of the other guys as he can to almost subsidise the squad. Which is it the greatest idea? No, but I think it's something we have to do.
The biggest Achilles heel last season was losing goals. I think you address that first and foremost. You know, you're going to persevere with the likes of a Jetty and maybe unleash Karamoko, then you'll get goals. Trumbull's quite creative. You know, McGregor's quite creative, scored in the Euros. So there is goals in that team from other players. The Celtic need to tighten up at the back. And as Lauren said, get big guys like Kobo and get big guys that can defend, first and foremost. I've said this countless amount of times. Work on the bases, get guys that can clear the ball on the deck and win it in the air, and then we work from there. Because we work on flair later. If that's the case, it builds a team. Just get guys in that are rigid, big stoppers and have a presence who can match Big Julian for height and can also maybe contribute in the box at the other end. These guys must be around. And we need
solid
them.
Foundations, isn't it? You want solid foundations to build on.
We need them pronto. And again, going back to what you said about the goalkeeper, every manager sees players in training, so I would never go against their judgment. So if he thinks that Ayeti and Barkas are worth another crack, then and we trust at this particular moment in time, he hasn't got much time to turn it around. But he must know, and every Celtic supporter knows, Laura, Celtic are in dire need of defenders. They're very light in those positions, and they have to do something about that within the next 10 days.
Yeah, well, just to bring in some of the thoughts of everybody watching on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, thanks for joining us. Shafi Show says, as soon as I saw that team, I thought Andrew took a day off from team selection and that Kennedy was back up to his old tricks. John McGackey's a bit more positive, says, good to see wee Dembele getting a run out. And some people also just agreeing with what we've said about Seven Kakashi has said was hoping to see 2 or 3 maybe J-League signings. So there's a lot of thoughts on exactly what's going on with the signings and what's going on with the process at the club. One of the comments, apologies to whoever put it down there, Lawrence, I'll come to you on this. Says maybe Ange's making a point by putting out what he considers a poor team. Now, I don't consider it a hugely poor team, but I also don't think that Ange's really got a choice one way or another. I don't think he can afford to make statements with his lineup because he's actually got slim pickings as it is, or do you disagree with that?
Well, I think it maybe comes down to slim pickings, and you know that's the point. You know, that's the team he can put out because there's so few. So that, you know, he's not doing it to make a point. It's basically there are so few. That's what he can put out. But we are kind of down to the bones, I think. Listen, I just maybe just want to see the guys in a competitive game. You know, there's a few boys in that he's maybe going, listen, give them a run out, try a different formation. We want to see a competitive game. I know we've all seen them kind of maybe not last season live in person, but you know we've all seen kind of Ralston and Beaton and what they can and can't do. But Ange is maybe just giving it as he sees a fair crack of the whip, saying, look guys, it's down to you. Show me what you can do in the park. Convince me you're worth a start. Convince me that you can do it. Which, you know, from a new manager's I think fair enough attitude to players to say, look, it's a friendly, just go out and show me that you're worth a jersey.
But from middle to front, is that a poor team? That's more or less
sure.
With a couple of, you know, maybe Forrest coming in for Dembele per se in the European game, but that's about as strong as it probably gets at this moment with the bodies that we have. I mean, your concern is the defence. That needs sorted. No two ways about it, right? So, but from middle to front, we said we kind of trust that. That's a kind of tried and tested, well, apart from Dembele and Montgomery, depending on what way he plays. You know, so there's four or five in there that you would have in there anyway if you're picking a Celtic team. Is there not? So,
it's a decent side, but as you say, we all know we're short at the back. He said, Andrew's come out, he said it, he's identified the positions. Maybe young Moffat feels a wee bit left hard done by not getting enough start, but I'm sure Ange will have said to him, look, I'll let you see these guys, we've got another friendly coming up. Let's be honest, Moffat, if that's not doing enough to impress the manager in the last game, so I think he's maybe done enough to impress the manager to say, look, I should be part of your plans for the season going forward. And the manager's now having a look at a few other guys. Is it strong outside of Eddie, as you said, in Forest? Who else would we bring in? There's nobody really, is there?
You trust
Brian's
that,
touching it. Yeah, it's definitely worth. I mean, he looks to have lost a bit of weight, and he put in a shift, which is the first time I've seen him put in a shift in a Celtic jersey. I know kind of Bal and when him and Moy were up front, they were fairly hard working, and we didn't see that last season from him. A few goals when he first started, and then just seemed to be carrying a bit of weight and not too bothered, which unfortunately could be said about a lot of the team last season.
But that's the midfield the supporters were crying out for last season, wasn't it?
Aye.
That very midfield.
Yeah.
Certainly with those three in it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Am I missing something?
There's certainly some encouraging signs, I think, from some of the things he's doing. He's doing a lot more of the expected selections that we would have hoped for last season, as you say. And focusing more on the manager, Brian, I'll come to you. I've seen a bit of talk online that people are being slightly overcritical of Ange already, and overcritical of how the start has been and the lack of action. I personally don't think that anybody's been very critical of the manager. It's been more the case that you can change the manager, but you can't change the structure of the club. Surely, I think everybody can agree he's doing the best he can with what he's got at the moment.
Absolutely, I think in terms of the players, it could be the case that they're being pragmatic as normal and they're waiting for to see Vire and Edward stay if Christie stays. So I'd said before, I think it might be the case, and it's not the approach I took, but I think that they could be waiting to see how much money they've got to put out in these players. The thing is as well, if you're talking about maybe some of the guys who'll be linked with, Ben Davies, Starfelt, I hope we say his name right, they might be saying, well, if Ayer's there and Julian's coming back, am I going to get a game? Am I going to play every week? So they could be hanging on as well. Ben Davies has just sat on the bench for a season at Liverpool. He didn't want to come in unless he thinks he's going to start. So I think there's a lot of mitigating factors. I think we've been hurt so many times before, haven't we, in terms of transfers? And I think there's always the worry that if we don't get it right away, it's the same old problem we're going to have. And it's no, to answer your question, it's not Angie's fault, I don't think, for a second. And actually, maybe having the extra time to look over what we've got might benefit some of the other players, like guys like young Moffat, something like that. And they can come out. It might get the best out of Dembele. You might be saying to Dembele, look, man, this is your chance, but you've got a guy Moffat there who was excellent last week, and you've got Forrest coming back, so you need to start stepping up. So it could be a motivational thing. I do agree with Tony. We do desperately need defensive, signings. That's a must. And I'm disappointed they've not been in already, but I'm not going to kick their heads in for it too much yet because they've just come off the Euros as well. Agents have been running their mouths doing things. I don't know the ins and outs. Until we do, don't get me wrong, listen, if it's Michelin and Beaton's at centre half, I'll be the first one complaining. But for the moment, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
If you're Ben Davies and you're Starfelt, you're walking straight into that first team. There's no questions asked. If you cannot walk straight into that Celtic first team, then we shouldn't be looking at you. Bottom line.
If they've got an Ayer there and he's missed it. I don't particularly rate Ayer, right? And I think I'm along the lines of you, big fella. I think I'm 5'6" and I can jump higher than Ayer, right?
Correct.
It's insanity. I've never seen a defender as scared of a header in my life.
Who loses height when he jumps for a ball.
Listen, he's a right back. Ayer's a right back. He shouldn't ever be centre half.
So
I'd put him right back in the changing room now because I'd get shot him. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. My point is, they're right. They should walk in. But if you're them, do you think if they've got Ayer and he's got a big deal, Julian coming back, the signed Urigidi, who's a prospect, Welsh is still alright, am I walking straight in? They should have the confidence that they will, but I'm just not sure if maybe that's a hold up. I don't know, obviously, but it could be.
See if they're lacking that confidence.
That's a defensively poor Celtic side. If you've got walking straight in, and you're not even asking questions about who's coming back or if he's staying, you're walking into that team and you're hitting the ground running, if you really believe in your own ability, and you will star. Because if you can do the basics, you'll be fine in that Celtic team. That Celtic team last season was leaking goals right, left and centre, which caused the keeper to look bad as well. You know,
Totally.
The defence was terrible, and everything that came towards goal seemed to be going in. And so the keeper had no faith in the defence, and likewise the defence had no faith in the goalkeeper. So you had quite a lot of players being nervous wrecks whenever that ball, and panics whenever the ball came in the corridor of uncertainty, if you want to call it that, for want of a better expression. But it just fed into each other. The goalkeeper was having a nightmare, defence had a nightmare, you were conceding goals. So we need dominant personalities in there. I think Ben Davies could be that kind of person. From what I've read about Starfelt, he could be that kind of person. But I do think if those kind of guys come in, they will improve that from the get-go. And I think that's what Celtic need to do. Maybe need to speculate to accumulate and not worry about the money they're going to shell out, because it'll be worth it in the long term if they're going to make these guys the future of the club.
Yeah. Lawrence. Sorry, on you go, Lawrence. On you go.
I was going to say, if you're signing for your problem positions, it's the starters. You should be signing. Starters. They're the problem positions. The starters. And if guys don't have the confidence that they're going to walk into the team, they're probably not the right players for us. If they're lacking confidence. Yeah. I know it's only in front of 2,000. God knows what Nicholas thinking. 12,000 for Rugby, 12,000 for Hampden, 2,000 for Celtic Park. Who knows?
Millions at Wembley.
Exactly. But definitely, whoever we're signing needs to be starters, and maybe the club's hanging off a bit, because if you look what's happening over the League One in France, the uncertainty over the TV deal, there might be a bit of a fizzle going on over there if they don't get the TV money they need. We've cleared out a few players, like the goal scorer. Only guy can score 2 goals in a game, and then it's changed after the game to OGs with inconclusive TV evidence. But listen, good luck to Big Bio, but geez, who signed him?
I'll tell you something, Lawrence. If there's a fire sale in France, that young boy Killian up front for Paris Saint-Germain, I'd take him in a second. Maybe we can get him on the cheap after the Euros he's just had, But no, we'll wishful thinking as that is.
You're going to play at centre half or right back.
Celtic are
it'd probably be better than Beaton.
Celtic are kind of club that would find Paul Pogba and put him at centre half. That's the way you're a big guy, just slot in there,
Yeah. Brian, just to come back to you on a point that kind of was floating around something you were saying, I was quite encouraged to see from what you said about the team playing in the second half, there being a lot of changes. Do you think that's an advantage to a new manager coming in, especially somebody from outside of our game, outside of Europe even? He's got no preconceived ideas about any player in our squad. He's going to play the players he thinks show him what's required. And surely that's something that's refreshing for the season ahead, rather than previous managers we've had who, have their favourites.
Aye, absolutely. I think it serves a dual purpose as well. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think if you're playing... So I think in the first half teams, the sort of more experienced side, the second half's the younger guys, maybe in Chairman and Christie aside, but I think that's maybe a tactic to try and set a fire under somebody and say, look, I'm new in. Just because you played all last season doesn't mean you're going to get a game. And I do think, like I mentioned, as I say, Lawrence and Tony are right. We need experienced players straight in. But I think this is a good opportunity to see if we can save someone who's maybe squad players or some backups. So I think it's always a good opportunity to look at your youth first. I think that's something that Celtic moving forward need to do more. And it saves us trying to spend, 3 million pounds in a player and he sits on the bench all year, doesn't play. Whereas there's surely guys that you've already got there that might have something. So I like pre-season generally, but I've been particularly excited because him being an outsider and not one of the Celtic minded we've had in the past is actually probably quite good, because he'll come in, make his own judgments, play his own way, and then I think there might be a few surprises in the Midtjylland lineup.
Listen, that's his managerial modus operandi, isn't it?
Yep.
He likes a smattering of youth players in his football teams. So it's wise of him to look at every youth player that he has at his disposal. And good management for any any manager, good management is taking players and making them better. He's had a track record of that. He's got a history of that, bringing youth players through and making them better and turning them into league champions in the second season, normally wherever he's been. You know, the problem with Celtic is Celtic don't really have that luxury of time. But, you know, you have to get behind him and trust him what he's doing. And like Brian says, he'll be assessing every youngster in the hope that he can make players better and bring in a wee nugget there. And you might see some surprises in the Michelin lineup. That's fine, as long as we know that's what he's doing. You know, and that I think the Celtic supporters will accept that. But these players have to perform as well. It's no use saying you're a promising youth player. You know, if Ange gives you your chance, you've got to step up to the plate. And I get that inexperience and they'll make mistakes. That's fine. We live with that. But this is quite a pressured season, you know. And I don't want to put too much pressure on. I say he's exempt, certainly in the European scene, because it's been far too late for all this to come to fruition. But league-wise, you want to get a settled team and a formation and a style of football that you can hit the ground running in the league. You have to compete in the league this season. I said yesterday about the transition thing, and I'm not buying a Celtic team in transit. Never heard it in my puff. You know what I mean? You have to compete, nay, win the league. There's £40 million at stake to the winners this season. Now, you get into football because you want to rise to these challenges, and you get into football because you want to play in pressure situations. I get that. You have to handle it. If you're 17, 27, 37, it doesn't matter. If you're playing for Celtic, it brings its own pressure. You have to find a coping mechanism and a way, and that goes for the players, and it also goes for the management team. So let's see what he's going. Let's see what he does with assessing these youth players. And as Brian says, there could be one or two surprises in the team, but we go with him. He's got the whole supports behind him right now until things go wrong, as they say. You know what I mean? And then we'll need to see. But you know, you have to be positive and say, right, let's do it. We trust him. We trust his judgment.
No, it's a. Sorry, Tony. Just an interesting point there being raised by Philip DeMarco on YouTube comments. It's pre-season, so let's get them all minutes on the park. Each player will be given a target running distance and specific heart rate zone to work in. A good session is all we ask. I mean, that does make a lot of sense, because that's how, you know, that heart rate target and running target is how they're going to up their fitness. So perhaps, you know, we're looking a bit too much into it in terms of tactics, and actually it's more of a fitness exercise, but we do need to wait and see. Lawrence, looking at the team and the lineup just one last time before we finish up, is there anybody there who you think perhaps, you know, we've talked about some of the players getting a second chance who didn't have a chance last season, or some of the young players coming through. Is there anybody there who might be there next season who you think really needs to step things up? You know, McGregor didn't have a great season last season, but obviously showed himself a bit more of the player that we know at the Euros. Perhaps you're expecting more of him next season. Is there anybody else on your list that you think really needs to kind of up their game?
Up the game, hopefully Welsh and Taylor. I mean, I don't think they had bad seasons last year, but are they at the level that we're expecting for Celtic defenders? You know, I think both are decent players, but I'd like to see them progress. And yeah, probably that's why we're putting a manager like Ange, so he can make players better. Belly we never saw really last season, so anything we see is going to be progress. But I think it's a kind of double-edged sword when Dembele's last year of contract, so he's going to want minutes. If he's going to sign another contract, we're going to want to see that he can do something in those minutes if he's to continue getting them. So, you know, there's been big hopes for Dembele for years, hasn't there? And one way or another, he's never really got a run out in the park. The other part of that's, you know, he's had James Forrest in front of him. You know, although Forrest was injured for a large part of last season, so it certainly wasn't him keeping him out of the team. I believe there was a fallout with the manager last season. But I suppose Dembele, I'd hope to see Welsh and Taylor progress. You know, Taylor, the guys keep him out of Scotland teams, Robertson and Tierney. He's not a terrible left back, but we just want to see him up at a level now. There's a couple of things that people complain about he doesn't beat a man, doesn't got enough balls in the box, but he done decent in his numbers of assists, but maybe we'd like to see him now being more attacking, and hopefully Ange will bring that into his game. Welsh now a bit more settled at centre half, so hopefully he'll start being a bit more dominant, speaking to other players and driving the team forward. At centre half now, he's got a few games under his belt. We'll have that confidence to be more dominant.
Fingers crossed, but we're all excited to see what happens the next 45 minutes, 90 minutes. We'll let everybody go and get set up for watching the game wherever you are in the world. Thanks to Brian, thanks to Lawrence, and thanks to Tony for the start of the pre-match, and we'll join you later on in the afternoon to assess the performance of the team. Thanks very much, everybody, and speak to you soon.